I live like a capitalist every single day, Cenk. I live as a capitalist.
So where is the word democracy in any of the founding fathers?
A lot of the founding fathers had extremely elitist viewpoints.
Kobe Bryant was assassinated by the Clintons.
All right, and free speech is not a crime.
You can argue speech is a cause for conflict in America every day. People from all backgrounds use words that inevitably others find offensive and enraging, but in America, we have the First Amendment that says we have the freedom of speech, and we can say what we want. But does it? Today we're gonna explore free speech, what it is, its limits, and why it's so important. The First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. There are a couple ideas there. The First Amendment starts with the protection of freedom of religion, but it also goes to the speech, press, and assembly. These rights play off each other. There is this umbrella protection of the speech that we all have, and it's provided to us explicitly in different contexts. The freedom of speech to express in press, or the freedom to be able to assemble and be with and share ideas and thoughts with the people that we choose to share our thoughts with. To understand the importance of the First Amendment and why it is the First Amendment of the Constitution, you have to understand the history of our country. Ultimately, when this country was founded, it was founded under the oppression and the resistance to a foreign regime. And the goal of the First Amendment and the foundational principles established in the First Amendment were to ensure that whoever was in the United States of America didn't have to live under the same authoritarian regime where people are imprisoned for sharing their religious views, imprisoned for talking back or about the government or its power, and ultimately allowing people to be together to share their ideas without fear of punishment from the government. In other words, the First Amendment restricts the government, not private actors. Importantly, the First Amendment protects people from censorship or government action upon them, but it doesn't protect people from private action against each other. As a whole, the Constitution creates prohibitions that the government cannot interfere with certain rights that the Constitution provides us. It does not create prescriptions or requirements for private citizens to engage with each other. You have the right to free speech to be free from the government's interference of your speech, but that doesn't mean it is without boundary or limitation. There are limitations to free speech. Classic exceptions include incitement to imminent violence, true threats, defamation, obscenity, and certain commercial speech regulations. The one that the courts focus on the most is this incitement to imminent violence and true threats. So who decides whether your speech or conduct is free speech protected by the First Amendment or not? The way this works in practice is that there are criminal codes that are created, and if you violate that criminal code, whether it's by something you did or whether it's something you said, then you can be prosecuted and convicted. During that process, you can raise the defense that whatever you said or whatever you did is actually protected by the First Amendment. And if that defense is raised, the courts will have to decide whether what you said is protected speech or whether it can actually be prosecuted and convicted criminally. For example, if somebody decided to put some pornographic materials on the outside of their business facing the street, that would likely violate a criminal code, and that violation would likely be upheld as constitutional. That conduct itself can be considered speech, but that the Supreme Court has said that obscene conduct or obscene speech is not protected by the First Amendment. So what does it mean to be obscene? The Supreme Court says you'll know it when you see it. An example of pure speech that is criminalized involves the incitement of violence, and an example of that comes from the 1990s when there was speech related to a terroristic plot targeted at the World Trade Centers. This case was the United States v. Rahman and ultimately was decided on appeal in the late 1990s, and it upheld the conspiracy convictions of the defendant Rahman, despite his claims that his speech were protected by the First Amendment. In a conversation, defendant Rahman had said, quote, "He should make up with God by turning his barrel to President Mubarak's chest and killing him." He was also quoted, "Yes, it's a must, it's a duty," when he was asked about bombing a United Nations headquarters. These were just conversations, just words exchanged. The plots themselves never came to fruition. No one was bombed and no one was killed. But the speech itself was criminal based upon a criminal code section that he violated. The fact that it didn't violate the First Amendment is because it incited violence and was an imminent threat. That's the rule created by the Supreme Court in the Brandenburg versus Ohio case in 1969. Here's the rule. The constitutional guarantees of free speech and free press do not permit a state to forbid or prescribe advocacy of the use of force or of law violation, except where such advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. The rule is, speech that is intended to incite and produce imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce that action is criminal and does not qualify as free speech. Recently, Attorney General Pam Bondi made some public comments about targeting certain types of speech.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Attorney General Bondi got this one wrong, and to her credit, she walked it back. Hate speech can be protected free speech unless it is intended and is likely to incite violence, which is what our Supreme Court has told us. Another common misunderstanding of free speech is that it protects you in your private workplace or in your private relationships. Employers, social media platforms, and private groups can and often do set their own standards for acceptable speech. So while the First Amendment prevents consequences from the government, it doesn't prevent consequences from private people or private organizations. A company can fire you for saying something that they don't agree with. Freedom of speech does not equal freedom from consequences. While the government cannot silence your views, free speech does not shield you from criticism, social backlash, or professional consequences. Criticism of speech is itself an exercise of free speech. And in our current climate, I fear that we've mistaken criticism with censorship. Charlie Kirk was a conservative influencer who frequently visited college campuses and public debate forums to express views that some found disagreeable, offensive, and unkind.
I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
However, all of his speech was protected free speech. And since his death, what we're seeing on social media and on the news is conversation about what people think about what he said, how he said it, and their views on it. That in and of itself is also free speech. What I want us to recognize, and what I hope we can recognize, is that his exercise of free speech and sharing what he believed in doesn't protect him from criticism of others who disagreed with him. And it doesn't protect others from disagreeing with them. What it does protect, as it relates to the Constitution, is the government's infringement and censorship of all of those views, regardless of what side we're on. And what we hope the First Amendment can also do is that within our society, it will give us all the feeling of protection that we will not have violence committed upon us for exercising that right. That we can have debates and understand that when people say something that we might disagree with, it hurts. And because it hurts, we want to respond. And that we should be encouraging each other to respond with our words, not with violence. Some of the best lessons we're taught in life are taught in kindergarten. And I can still hear my kindergarten teacher telling me, use your words, use your words. That you can walk into a Utah Valley University debate hall or a Virginia Tech debate hall and discuss issues with someone with whom you disagree. And you can both walk away, go home that night, see your families, and think about that debate. We're all better for it. Freedom of speech is not only a legal right, it's also a social virtue that is part of the American way. I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on just about everything. I found him offensive, harmful, hurtful, smart guy, knew what he was talking about, understood issues, and conveyed them sometimes kindly and sometimes unkindly. But as Voltaire says, I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will defend your right to say it to the death. And he had the right to express his views, and he had the right to challenge other people on theirs. The violence that came upon him and has come upon his family is unacceptable, and it's unacceptable regardless of what side of the spectrum, political, social, or otherwise, that you are on. Use your words. Protect free speech.